Hello, and you're all very welcome to LiveWIRE. This is the second year of LiveWIRE sessions celebrating strong and inspiring women in rugby on International Women's Day. This year's global theme for International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge, and there is no doubt that all three guests today have chosen to challenge in each of their respective roles to get them to the positions that they are now in and to the heights that they have reached. I'm thrilled and honoured to host such fantastic guests here today, each trailblazers in their own right, and luckily for us to be associated to them here in the world of rugby. Women who have paved the way for other women and will hopefully inspire some of you tuning in today. I have no doubt the conversation will be thought-provoking, and hopefully you will leave here at the end of today with some nugget of information or advice to take away. We will discuss the impact of the pandemic on women in rugby from the eyes of these three inspirational women. We will plan to have time at the end for a Q&A, so if you have any questions, you can pop them in at the end and we will hope to answer them all. So now for the important guests. So we've got Su Carty. She is currently one of two women on the IRFU Union Committee. She also sits on the Rugby Facilities Committee, Third Level Committee, Spirit Committee and the IRFU Women's Advisory Group. She is an IRFU representative to World Rugby Council and is also a referee. Su has successfully continued her career outside of rugby and is a performance and well-being in business and sports speaker, consultant and coaching expert. A psychiatric nurse specialising in child and adolescent mental health. She inspirationally answered Ireland's call and returned to her previous career as a mental health nurse during this pandemic. And she recently was involved in setting up the Ohana Zero Suicide Programme as a director and successfully launched it at the end of 2020, where it has gathered great traction since. Su, welcome and thank you for coming on. Next guest is Anne Heneghan. She is the first woman to hold the position of president of an Irish rugby branch. Anne came through the ranks from club volunteer in Ballinrobe to club delegate to the province, then became secretary of the Connacht junior team. From then she moved to chair of the Connacht Supporters Club. She took a break for a few years to concentrate on setting up her business. Anne is a qualified solicitor and runs her own practice, Hennigan Associates. Her value was missed, and then she was then asked to return and sit on the disciplinary committee, where shortly after became chair of the disciplinary committee, then filling the role of junior vice president of Connacht to senior vice president and finally president. And if that's not enough, Anne is also involved with World Rugby as a judicial officer. So welcome, Anne, and thank you for coming on. And finally we have Emily Lane. Emily has been a member of the Irish Women's Sevens squad since 2018. Before that, she captained the Ireland Sevens team in Ukraine 2019, the perfect person for the role, having previously captained the Ireland Under-18 Sevens team in 2017. Emily has come up through the ranks and grassroots level, playing at Mallow Rugby Club at youth level. She also represented Munster Under-18 interprovincial level, and I currently have the delight of training with Emily in the Ireland 15 squad. She balances her rugby career while also studying for a degree in biochemistry at UCD. So welcome, Emily, and welcome, ladies, and thank you all so much for coming on today. So Anne, we'll start with you. You have over 30 years of rugby experience under your belt. So tell us a little bit about your journey up to this point.
I suppose, as you said, I got started with my local club, Ballinrobe. I was lucky. I had three brothers who played. My dad was a mad rugby fan, which I suppose was unusual in a country area in Mayo at that time. So I had a little bit of an insight into rugby and loved the game always. So just got involved with my local club. I started off as PRO and then became the club delegate for Ballinrobe to Connacht Rugby. And I suppose that's where the journey then with Connacht began. At the time, I would have been the only woman, you know, walking into the branch meetings in Connacht. I was the only female in the room. Because my brothers had played, though, at least the name was known and I was welcomed in. I didn't really meet any huge opposition. People were very welcoming. I suppose there was a little bit of nervousness that it was, you know, I was just kind of jumping on a bandwagon. I didn't really know what rugby was all about, and so you do. I mean, back then especially, you do have to prove yourself. And it's just a case of getting your head down and getting on with the job, and people then start to realise that, you know, yeah, you do know what you're talking about. You can be an asset in the room, and things just kind of progressed from there.
I think it's interesting that you said that you didn't actually experience a lot of pushback or negativity around your own role, but it was you yourself that didn't feel like you were rightly and justly there in that position.
That's right, Eimear. I suppose it's the whole women's perspective, you know, whereas a man will walk into a room and most of the time they have a, you know, sense that they belong there, whereas a woman a lot of time walking into a room like that will think, you know, they feel like an imposter, or are they good enough, or, you know, can they actually add anything? And I think that's why, you know, International Women's Day is fantastic, because it can showcase women that have progressed in their various different areas, and for young girls coming up, you know, that just have some self-confidence, have belief in yourself, and just, you know, get in there and get stuck in. You know, we can be an asset to any place that we want to be, and we, you know, we are getting recognition. I mean, women in rugby is certainly becoming more common now. There, you know, there were a couple of junior vice presidents in Connacht in the various different clubs, which again was unheard of 10 years ago. And, you know, not that you want to be inspirational, but you certainly want to be there for somebody that can, you know, they can pick up the phone to you and say, look, I've been asked to do this, what do you think? And be able to say, well, absolutely, go for it. And if you need any help or any advice, or if I can come and help you at any point, just give me a shout. You know, and that's the kind of thing I think we need to do more of as women, you know, not feel that we have to struggle on our own, but make the phone call, you know, call somebody, pick up the phone, send an email saying, look, you know, what do I do here? How can I get involved with my club or with my province or with the IRFU? And just take the knowledge from, you know, people like myself, people like Sue, who've been involved for years, and just like we've kind of created some of the groundwork, and hopefully other people can follow on from that.
Exactly, you have done the groundwork, and I suppose going back to the 2020 campaign last year, where it was can't see, can't be. Yes, that's meant playing role, but I think in your instance, it's meant as a, like, the role that you're in has made other women not just take up those secretarial roles and not just take up those admin roles. I think you've proven that people now were like, oh, Anne can do it. Well, do you know what? I can do it too. And have you felt that you've had that effect on other women?
I think so. I suppose it was hard with the pandemic, you know, like normally as president, I would be going out to visit clubs, you know, I'd be there presenting trophies at schools events and that type of thing. I was lucky, I suppose, in that as junior and senior vice president, I would have been involved in the, say, the underage game, you know, I would have gone to schools tournaments. And there you're coming across school kids, you know, kind of going, wait a minute, why are you in a blazer? You know, what do you have to do with Connacht or with Irish rugby? And it's great to see, you know, kids like that coming back and go, well, you know, she's from a small club in the west of Ireland. You know, if she can do it, why can't anybody else? And even though, I mean, the pandemic obviously means I can't go out and visit clubs, so the only thing I've been able to do is do interviews, do podcasts. And it's the one thing I've been trying to do all the way through, is just keep emphasising that, you know, I'm nothing special. I love rugby. I just got stuck in, got involved. And as I say, if somebody from Mayo, small club, west of Ireland, can get to president of Connacht Rugby, you know, there's no reason why anybody else can't do it.
You're representing all the different minorities there, the west of Ireland.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Do you think women, it's often been said that, you know, a woman won't apply for a job unless they're 110% qualified, or they think they have the attributes to make it in that job. And sometimes men will be 70% qualified and they'll back themselves and they'll believe themselves that they're good enough for that job. As a woman, did you find that you had to work even harder to prove yourself that you were the perfect candidate for this position?
To be honest, with the role of president, it's an honorary role. And I suppose, like the other provinces, Connacht, for all of its history, have had male retired presidents for the most part, because it does take up quite a bit of time. So when I got the phone call asking me to, you know, to take up the position of junior vice president, I can't say what I actually said over the phone. It wouldn't be PC at this time on a Monday afternoon, but it was a complete shock, you know. It was nothing I'd ever even considered, which again, I suppose the fact that I'm here now, I hope that it'll make other people consider that role, because it never even entered my head. And as you say, I know it is an honorary role, but, you know, men having been involved for maybe 15, 20 years kind of expect they're going to be president at some stage. You know, I've been involved for guts of probably 30 years and it never even entered my head. So that's the one thing that I hope, you know, me being here will change, that other women will kind of go, well, hang on a second, I've been involved for so many years, you know, if she deserves a role like that, then I do as well.
I do, and I think the hurdles and obstacles aren't necessarily, you know, the men in charge or the people already there in those positions. It's us ourselves as women that we need to realise that, yes, I'm more than capable of filling this duty, and to put yourself forward. And if we're going back to the International Women's Day motto this year, is to choose to challenge yourself, to put yourself forward into those positions.
Yeah.
Obviously, COVID has caused us many challenges and obstacles along the way, but how do you think you've adapted in your role, or have you been able to take any positives from this situation?
I suppose because I was in the unique position of being the first female president of any of the provinces, so there was a lot of media attention, particularly at the start. So I was using that, you know, I was using the interviews. Anybody that asked me, you know, would I do you know, a Zoom session, you know, there were different invitations at different stages over the year, you know, to kind of talk to women in sport and women in business and all of that type of forum. And every opportunity I got, I've been jumping at it, you know, and trying to get the message across, you know, look, like you say, you know, a man who's 70% qualified will think they're entitled to the position, whereas a woman nearly feels like she has to be 110% before she'd even consider going for the role. So by everything being locked down, I've had more of an opportunity to do more online face-to-face stuff. So even though I'm probably reaching more people by doing those kind of forums than I would have if I was just going out among the clubs in Connacht. So I think, you know, nobody can say the pandemic has been good, but there are some positives to the way that we've adapted how we deal with it and how we liaise and communicate with other people. So I'm hoping that's one of the positives that's come from this.
Absolutely, and fantastic outlook to take positives out of such a difficult situation in the pandemic. And thank you. I'm just going to move on to Sue.
Thanks, Eimear.
Sue, wow, your life has certainly changed since the start of the pandemic. You have certainly been busy.
Yes, thanks, Eimear. Great to be here with everyone as well. Yes, it's been busy, and it's been, I suppose, fascinating. A little bit like what you were saying with Anne there. There's been so many moments where it's like, it's terrible, it's awful. What am I going to do? It shouldn't be this way. But there's been a couple of things that's really made a big difference. And one was, you know, the different networks and the different teams and everything that, you know, that we're part of. One of them is the Roscommon network for me with women in business. And at the beginning of the first lockdown, you know, I started a conversation with them. It's like, what about we just chat every day? We'll have a coffee and chat every day and look at how we support each other to move the thing forward. And I suppose it was like that sense of reaching out to support each other and not get all caught up and fascinated about myself, really made a big difference. And I went from a couple of days of feeling, well, that's the end of business. That was a great adventure. It's time for something else now, into the business just started to move online and things started to take off in a different way. And then there was Ireland's call, and my first thought when I saw Ireland's call was, well, they'll need general nurses, they'll need people who specialise, you know, linked with COVID. But, you know, my next thought was, hold on a second, I've had that thought so often in rugby, where it's like someone needs to do something, it needs to be somebody else, you know, who's better or more skilled or whatever, not me. And I was like, hold on a second, they may need me too. So that led me to go back working as a psychiatric nurse in St. Vincent's. And to be honest, like, I feel really lucky because I loved working in that whole area when I was there, and rugby led me into a whole different journey. But the opportunity to be back in, I think I was in like 10 minutes, and it was like, you're always there, and it was supporting patients who also needed psychiatric health and support and care, as well as medical, during COVID. But it also, like, had been highlighted for me. I've always been saying I want to do more in the area of mental health. I want to do something more here. So it led to a conversation with a couple of fantastic people. We formed our team, Ohana Zero Suicide, and we launched the initiative in December. And it's just been incredible and really timely. Like, we were eager to do something that would have a pretty immediate effect. And the whole idea is, it's a simple online training. It takes between 20 and 40 minutes to complete, depending, how how slowly or that you'd like to go through it. But and that's fine. I mean, absolutely, like, take your time with it. But it's between 20 and 40 minutes. And it's really to help you have a conversation with someone you might be worried about. Those moments where you're not sure what you're going to say, and you're kind of thinking, well, maybe I'm better if I don't say anything, and you shy away from it. This really gives you a sense of what to say, where to start, and how to get the person to the help that they need. So it's just, to be honest, it's been amazing. The response has been massive. Like, it's been sports clubs all over the country have, encouraged each other to do it. And we launched our corporate awards just a couple of weeks ago, which is really inspiring companies to promote the training and support each other. So yeah, it's been a bit of a whirlwind year, and
it's funny. It's funny, isn't it, that, like, you make so many plans in life, and then I think flip back 12 months ago, I don't think you would have imagined, one, that you'd be back nursing, and two, that this Ohana Zero Suicide course would have been founded. And you've achieved well over your targets for the first quarter of the year.
Oh, we can't honestly believe it. Our target for the first quarter was 30,000. If 30,000 people click in to the training, then that's great. We're close to 200,000. It has been phenomenal. And what's really nice is, it's just, sometimes we don't know where to start. And like the thing I just encourage everyone to do is, like, pick up the phone. We're in a world of popping a message. It's like, make the call. You mightn't usually make the call, but it's just giving you a place to start. It's just had people lift up their heads and look around. And the biggest thing for me this year is the moments where I haven't been so focused and bothered about myself. Something great has happened when I got more concerned with supporting each other or making a difference. Now, like, no halo. Do you know what I mean? It's just those moments, like the conversations with the Roscommon Network, the back into the nursing. There's a moment where, but it's been great, and I think that's probably been one of the nicest things I've been left with this year.
I think it's such a good point. Like, you did happen to set up this amazing Ohana Zero Suicide training, but it could be something as simple as a cup of coffee or a text or reaching out. I know as Tackle Your Feelings ambassador with RPI, there's an app, and the app sometimes, you can just check in with yourself, and you can, one of it is just creating a support network, and finding your support network is so important. And I think the last year, between myself as a Tackle Your Feelings ambassador and you with the Ohana Zero Suicide, it was perfect timing for something like this, when people have so many means of communication but yet feel so isolated and feel so alone. And yes, we can have Zoom calls, and yes, we can have Snapchat and TikTok and unlimited Teams meetings, but it sometimes people just felt so alone in all of this communication as well.
Yeah, no, totally, and you're absolutely right. It's that sense of getting involved in something else. The timing has been pretty incredible, and I think, look, like the pandemic, it's terrible. The lockdown, I mean, like, it's tough. It's awful. It's not like trying to sugarcoat it as, oh, it's the best thing that ever happened. But I think there's something about the involvement in sport and the involvement in teams. You know, you get knocked back, you know, and you can get knocked back again and again, but there's a sense of picking yourself up and picking the people up around you, and it's like making the best of the position you're in, rather than wishing you would already cross the try line or whatever. You make the best of the moment you're in, and then actually something's possible. Then you can move something forward and help each other out as well, which is pretty great. But you like you mentioned your involvement with Tackle Your Feelings as well, and it's brilliant. It's really great. There's so many great things out there, and that's definitely one. But like you're like training with the women's 15s national team, and you know your media work in the last year, including that great moment in TG Cahir, when there was a whole, you know, all women team for the first time. And Eimear, I forget that you're a teacher as well, and you've had that going on remotely. Like, what's the year been like for you?
Well, Sue, this wasn't supposed to be about me at all, but yeah, do you know what? Some phenomenal moments, and people actually always ask, "Oh, are you still teaching?" I was like, "Yeah, still teaching as well." But the TG Car thing was phenomenal, and I don't think we realised just how big it was, because I think Maura Trask and myself have been on, and Dervin Concord has been on, and Mara Brennan has been on as well at different times. TG Car have always been really, really amazing when it comes to supporting female athletes, be it ladies football with their coverage, or be it Rugby BO with their female analysts, and obviously now they're covering the AFL. So they've really been forward thinking, but it just takes somebody to just have an idea and go take the chance in having females on, and it got amazing media coverage, and like very little, you know, there's always going to be negative stuff on the media and in Twitter, but you know, it was very little of it, and that was so positive. And at the end of the day, Sue, it's not about, you know, oh, they were an all-female role. Maura Trask is one of the best presenters I've ever worked with. She's phenomenal at her job, what she does. Dervin Concord has played both 15s and 7s for Ireland. Mara Brennan has played with Galway and look, has phenomenal rugby knowledge, and like they're all amazing at what they do. It's not because they're females, it's because they're the best person for the job. And I think that's the most important thing, is that we're not putting a token female on a panel because we have to. It's because they're good enough to be there. And I think that was the key message that I was trying to promote as well, that everyone was more than capable of being in those positions. But phenomenal, and it was so honoured. I was so honoured to be able to be involved in that, for sure. Emily, what a roller coaster of a year for players. You have a game, you don't have a game. The World Series was cancelled, and then just recently World Rugby announced the new dates. How challenging is that for you as a player?
Yeah, well, firstly, I just wanted to say how humbled I am to be a part of this discussion today with you three amazing women. Like, if you told me this last year that I'd be on something like this, I wouldn't have believed you. So I just want to say thank you to all of you. But yeah, the past year has been crazy, basically. You know, it was this time last year, basically. We were coming back from a training tournament in France, and then we were told, you know, go home for the weekend, grand. Just never came back up to Dublin. So going from that team sport and being around your teammates basically 24/7 to not seeing anyone and training as almost an individual athlete, I found that very tough. You know, as an athlete, you know yourself, Eimear, we train to compete, and we're all competitive. We want games to go ahead. We look forward to that, and that comes through in training. So when those competitions were cancelled, not knowing when they were going to happen, like if they were going to happen, not knowing when we'd be training together again, it was very tough. And I think I can say for all the girls as well, like we all found it hard. And motivation was low as well. I'm sure you felt that too, and all the listeners here today, you know, training with no goal in sight is hard. And, you know, I think one thing the pandemic taught me was, you know, you can't always depend on something to motivate you, or, you know, other people around you to motivate yourself. Like, you really need to look inwardly and ask yourself the question, like, why is it that I want to be a rugby player? Why do I want to succeed? those sort of questions. So I think that was one of the benefits of the pandemic. I really looked inwardly, and I kind of discovered like this is what I want to do with my life. I want to go to a World Cup. I want to go to an Olympics. I want to win a World Series. So yeah, well, it's been a crazy year, and especially the news of the Women's World Cup now being the 15s being postponed, like that seems super tough. And I'm sure, Eimear, it's been even more tough for you as a player who's been involved in the 15s. Like, how have you been dealing with the news?
Yeah, Emily, I think similarly to you with the team environment, and like I think I learned that I would never make it as an individual athlete. Like, it's so difficult to go out and run on your own and do gym on your own. It's the team environment that really drives you. And like, it's been back in, like, we're so grateful that we do get to train. We're one of the few teams that actually gets to collectively train under that elite rule. But yeah, it's really disappointing because you were so close. Like, we were so close to qualifiers and then just taken away again. But completely understandable. Like, when you look at the world, we were, I suppose, blessed to be able to even think about going on a plane to New Zealand. But when you think of it logistically, with the quarantine rules, and what if one person gets COVID on the squad, is that the whole squad out? And I think it's just, so it's just the world that we live in at the moment. The good thing is we still have a Six Nations, which, you know, we're all fingers crossed that gets ahead. But as the girl said, you know, we won't actually believe it until we're on that pitch playing and the ball is kicked in, because you get your hopes up so much and then it's just deflated, absolutely. But Emily, like, so you said that your motivation was difficult, but what kept you motivated? Obviously, yes, the chance of an Olympics or the chance of World Series win and a World Cup, but what were the day-to-day tasks that motivated you to get up and to keep going and to do those sessions, and to like, what were your coping mechanisms in the situation? Because at the end of the day, the pandemic is still very much here. So for anyone that's listening or watching, like, what tips would you give them that you have done to stay motivated while at home?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was tough. Like, you know, you're going out running by yourself when you're used to playing with, you know, your teammates. So firstly, the GPS was one of my motivators. If I didn't hit high speed meters, like, our S&C will be on to you like a flash. But yeah, it was just going out and going onto the pitch. If I wasn't feeling 100% and I'd start my run, I just asked myself, what is the point in doing this if I'm not going to give it my all? You know, I may as well just go home and sit on the couch. So it's just giving your best at everything you do. So, you know, if you are going out doing a kicking session, just even if it's for 20 minutes, just give it your best shot. I think that's one of the best things. And another thing was kind of keeping yourself accountable by, you know, messaging your friends. You know, we all of the girls on the team, like, we text each other if we found a session hard, or like, you know, things like that. You know, getting a better motivation. Like, if you knew you still had to run, you'd be like, oh, I don't want to do this, but someone would send you a message like, oh, it's not too bad, like, go for it, like, text me afterwards how you found it. So I think that was great. So it's just like remembering, especially if you're part of a team, and I know I'm so grateful at the minute that we can train together, but if you're training alone and you're part of a rugby team, part of a football team, anything, remembering it's not just you, it's the collective. So each bit of work that you do, you're helping the team as a whole. So as long as you're working, you're still benefiting the team. So I think focusing as, you know, that overall bigger picture, and not just you. If you mess up, that's fine, someone else will carry you. So just, you know, giving them your 100%, I think, for me.
Yeah, I think what's so inspiring with all of you is that you've managed to take a really negative situation in the pandemic of, like, yes, it is, people have lacked motivation, people have lost jobs, you've lost contact with your people around you, but you've managed to keep in contact and make that effort by a simple text message, or, like, as you said, I mean, you know, just texting a girl on your team for motivation, and it was your Zoom calls. But one really inspiring thing with the three of you is you've managed to flip it around and take the positives out of it, which is such, like, an amazing, I think, female trait, and especially the three of you here, is that, yes, it's the resilience, and I think that's what sport shows us, is the resilience to get back up again. And at the end of the day, the sun will rise tomorrow, and we must get up and face the day. And can you take any positives going forward, or anything that like COVID might have opened our eyes up towards, like more opportunities going forward in relation to like technology working as our friend, or what positives or what has COVID done to open up our eyes for future?
I suppose the first thing I'd say is, you know, Emily, when she started off, was saying, you know, she'd never have imagined a year ago she'd be here chatting with us. I've learned after listening to her now, you know, I mean, I feel now like I'm motivated and I want to do stuff, even if I'm doing it on my own, which is great. It just shows that a simple conversation can motivate us to something different, or put a new thought in our heads. In terms of the question, I suppose, yes, it's made life easier, you know, instead of sitting in the car and having to go into Galway, or having to go to Dublin or whatever for a meeting. You're just logging on, you know, you're sitting in your living room and you're logging on to a call. That brings its own challenges in terms of maybe chairing a meeting, because you can't read a room. Like, it's very easy if you're sitting at a top table and you're asking, is there any questions? You know, you just look around the room and you can see if somebody is hesitant or wants to ask a question, and you can just nab them and pull them into the conversation. When it's online, you can't read a room. You know, sometimes you're looking at a screen and there's complete silence, and you're thinking to yourself, you know, do I fill the silence? Do I keep going? Do I move on to the next topic on the agenda, or how do you work it? It has made things more efficient in some ways, but you certainly do need the human interaction, I think, to get proper conversations going. It's made life a bit easier, but it's just not the same as getting a group of people in a room and having a proper conversation, particularly if there's something that needs to be kind of trashed out, you know, in terms of rugby, whether it's, you know, competition changes or law changes or anything like that. To get proper feedback, I think you need to be in a room with people. Online just isn't going to cut it. But hey, look, we're managing. Everyone is we're still meeting. We're still doing everything. We're keeping everything up to date. So for now, it's fine. You know, until we can move back to normal again.
Yeah, I know personally as a teacher, and Emily, you can probably relate to me. I'm going on a live call and I have 30 cameras off in front of me, and I call on someone for an answer and it's completely silence. But I as a teacher missed the interaction, with the social interaction, and going back last week to school was just, you know, you were instantly happier to be back in front of the class. And for once, 6 years, we're happy to be in an Irish class and doing PE out in the freezing cold. But long may that last. But Emily, as a student this year, I suppose, yes, it's the social side of things that you've missed out on, and obviously a lot of virtual learning, but was there any positives to that at all?
For me, obviously missing out on college and going into practicals and things, it's hard, like when you're in your room just trying to motivate yourself. But it actually worked out pretty well. As a sevens player, we travel a lot and we train a lot. So trying to like fit my schedule with college around that has been hard, and I've split my year. So I'm doing third year over 2 years, so I kind of get more in. So the fact that everything's moved online means that I actually get more stuff done. Everything's recorded, so if I'm at training, I don't have to worry about, you know, missing a practical or missing a lecture or anything. I can just log on and watch back. So it's actually been a blessing for me, and I'm probably everyone else who's studying and who's training. It's the best thing that's happened to me, because I just fit it all in there. So I'm buzzing, but not everyone can say that. I'm so lucky I can go into training, I meet people, and then I can get my college work done. It's the first year college students, or it's the first years going into secondary school, who don't know anyone in their class, who want to get a feel for that student experience, you know, that are really missing out. So I feel for those, but I'm doing okay anyway.
And Sue, have you had any time outside of the Ohana training and going back nursing? Has your rugby career and your roles involved in those committees kind of taken a back seat as a result?
No, not at all. To be honest, Eimear, I was joking actually the other day, saying, you know, it's the first time we've had a World Rugby Council meeting in Roscommon. So that's the accessibility, you know, like we can get on with the work, and like absolutely, as Anne said, it's not the same as being together in person for sure. But the fact that it is so accessible, that we can connect, that we can get on with the business of the game is really great and really encouraging. And I think the other thing that I found really encouraging over this period has been the focus on the women's game. So there hasn't been a sense of needing to, you know, fight to make sure that it happens. It's like, well, of course, you know, it's not like, well, we need to sort out the men's first and then we'll sort out the women's. It's been right there front and center. And you know, I've had moments like that in the year where it's like, well, actually, you know, our positioning and where we are, we've really moved forward. And then you hear news today with the Lions doing a feasibility study around a women's competition, and it's like that's so encouraging. Like, we just want all of those doors open so we can have the conversation and look at, well, what can we put in place that really will fulfill on what we know is possible when the women's game really gets to flourish. So, you know, there's a lot of kickbacks and challenges and all of that for sure. And there are lots of positives that we can really build on and move forward with. And that's a really encouraging place to be, I think.
Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic opportunity to potentially have a Lions tour. Obviously there's uncertainty about the men's Lions tour at the moment, but that's just given this year. But definitely would be something that would be a great opportunity for, you know, British and Irish Lions tour to compete. God knows who they'd compete against or when, or where. But look, it's great that it is in the pipeline and that people like you are on committees, I suppose, fighting and making us a priority and making female athletes and women's rugby a priority as well. And that all of you are in such amazing roles, you know, promoting our sport. I just want to say what an amazing, like, thought-provoking conversation I've just had with the three of you. And I think what's important here is that there's no one-size-fits-all for how we've reacted to this pandemic, that everyone is different. Everyone has been in a different boat, even though we're in the same storm. And I suppose whatever position you are in rugby, whether you're coaching, refereeing, whether you're a committee member, is that each person has been through this and experienced a different pandemic. And what's most inspiring about you three, I think, is that you've managed to take the negatives and turn them into the positives, which is another good message. If there's anything, I think sometimes we need to stop and realise, well, what am I grateful for? Yes, it's a disaster. I can't go anywhere, but look, I live in this beautiful area, or I get to spend more time with my family, or like you said, Emily, you went back to Tip and didn't come back up to Dublin. And I know personally I got to spend quite a lot of time at home with my family who I wouldn't always get to see. And you have to take the good with the bad. And I think sometimes look on the bright side a little bit more. It was so interesting looking at women in rugby from these different viewpoints here on LiveWire to celebrate International Women's Day. Thank you to Sue, Anne and Emily for their time, but also to the IRFU and to everyone involved behind the scenes today in making this happen, especially Orla, Amanda, Anne-Marie, Maria Ross and Stephen. So big huge thank you and a happy International Women's Day to everyone.